Imagine signing a car loan and knowing you won't actually own that car outright for 7 agonizing years.
Right. It's a terrifying thought.
I mean, all while that vehicle is losing value by the minute. Welcome to Auto News Talk.
Glad to be here for this one.
Usually when you think about the automotive industry, the picture that comes to mind is just endless growth. Bigger factories, higher sales volumes, shiny new models rolling off the line.
Yeah, that used to be the default reality.
But looking at the current landscape, we're tracking an industry that is squeezed from every single possible direction. Automakers are hunting for margins wherever they can find them. Consumers are, frankly, completely tapped out on cash.
Called pipped out.
And local dealerships are being forced to hunt for extreme efficiencies just to keep the lights on.
Because growth is no longer a given, survival in this environment depends entirely on optimizing every single step of the automotive life cycle.
Right.
It's not just about making cars anymore. It's about fiercely managing the entire ecosystem around them. I mean, it is an era of forced efficiency.
And that is the exact terrain we're walking through for you on this segment of Auto News Talk. We're tracking a really fascinating chain reaction in the data.
A massive domino effect.
Exactly. We're going to look at how macroeconomic headwinds force massive automakers to slash costs, and then how that pressure trickles down directly into consumer affordability traps.
Which ultimately forces your local dealership to completely rewrite how they market cars and even how they staff their service bays.
Right, because if a corporate manufacturer pulls a lever to cut costs, that vibration travels all the way down to the financing desk and the service garage in your hometown.
It absolutely does.
So let's follow that first domino. We'll start right at the top of the food chain, looking at how the massive OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, are handling this squeeze.
And an analysis of Nissan's financial outlook paints a really revealing picture here.
It really does. Because on paper, it looks like a massive win, right? The analysis notes Nissan actually upgraded their forecast to a 50 billion yen operating profit.
Which is wild considering they were previously forecasting a loss.
Exactly. But you have to look under the hood. The same analysis points out that global sales for Nissan are actually expected to decline by 4.2%.
Right.
So wait, they're making more money, but they are selling fewer physical cars.
Yeah.
How do you pull that off?
Well, through severe restructuring, they call it the Renaissance strategy.
Okay.
Yeah. And it involves closing 7 different plants and eliminating about 20,000 jobs.
Oh, wow. 20,000.
Yeah, that's roughly 15% of their entire global workforce. Strategically, they are abandoning volume to refocus entirely on higher margin vehicles like the Rogue.
Right, the SUVs.
Exactly. And trying to leverage their China-developed N7 sedan to regain momentum. But the core driver of that profit upgrade is, well, it's where things get really delicate.
Yeah, I remember reading this part. The analysis explicitly highlights that this improved financial outlook is largely a one-time benefit. It's driven by eased U.S. emissions rules and foreign exchange tailwinds. Let's pause on that exchange rate piece, actually, because it's crucial to understand.
It's the whole ballgame for them right now.
Right. So when the Japanese yen is weak compared to the U.S. dollar, cars sold in America bring back a massive amount of yen when those dollars are converted back home.
Yep. It artificially inflates the balance sheet. It creates the illusion of a booming business,
So they're getting a temporary regulatory and currency lift while their actual core business of selling cars is shrinking.
Exactly. These non-recurring financial boosts are completely masking the softer underlying volumes.
It's like celebrating a perfectly balanced household budget, but only because you happen to find a crisp $100 bill on the sidewalk while walking your dog.
That is a perfect way to put it.
It looks great on a spreadsheet, but here's the massive blind spot. What this doesn't answer is whether Nissan can actually sustain this profitability once those temporary regulatory and currency tailwinds inevitably fade. If you cut 20,000 jobs and physical sales are still dropping, what happens when the exchange rate shifts the other way?
That is the exact existential threat hanging over them, and they're absolutely not the only ones facing a brutal reality check.
Yeah.
A separate Market Pulse report looking at the Detroit automakers shows GM, Ford, and Stellantis facing their own massive headwinds.
We're talking severe commodity inflation, supply chain snags, and frankly, a major pullback on electric vehicles.
The EV pullback numbers in that report are just jaw-dropping. It notes that General Motors is leaning hard into pricing discipline, but to reset their all-EV timeline,
Yeah.
they took a $7.6 billion write-down.
Wait, 7.6 billion?
Billion, with a B.
A write-down of that scale usually means the machinery, the factory lines, and the R&D dedicated to those EVs just suddenly lost their expected value.
Because consumer demand totally evaporated. A recalibration of that magnitude signals a profound industry shift.
So the entire sector is just aggressively shifting away from the rapid EV push that was dominating all the headlines.
Right, pivoting heavily back to value trims and internal combustion profit engines.
Meanwhile, Ford is battling incredible commodity inflation. The Pulse report points out that aluminum prices jumped 13%.
13% is a massive hit to the margin on a truck.
And on top of that, Ford lost about 100,000 F-Series units just because of a supplier's factory fire.
Yeah. Think about the physical reality of that. 100,000 trucks that just do not exist because a facility burned down right when raw material costs are skyrocketing.
It's a perfect storm. And then Stellantis is in its own battle.
Right. They are trying to prove that a 12% global shipment bump can actually translate into sustained U.S. pricing power.
And the analysts in the report remained very cautious about that. But I have to play devil's advocate regarding this whole pivot to value trims.
Okay, let's hear it.
The Detroit automakers are cutting costs and pushing lower-priced internal combustion models. But what this doesn't answer is exactly how far a company like GM can really lean on value-focused trims before it starts eroding their overall profit margins.
That's the big unknown.
Right. I mean, you could only cut the price tag so much before you are basically losing money on the metal.
And that tension is exactly what transitions us from the corporate struggles down to the actual buyer. The automakers are struggling to move volume because the consumer is fundamentally trapped.
Yeah. If you're listening to this and thinking, well, I'll just hold on to my current car longer, you really aren't alone.
That exact thought process is terrifying the local dealerships.
Because the math of car ownership is breaking down. An insight survey focusing on dealer finance and insurance.
The F&I departments.
Right, the F&I departments. It reveals that the affordability crunch is being driven more by household cash flow constraints than by the headline interest rates everyone constantly talks about.
We hear so much chatter about rates, but the survey notes that 60% of dealers cite customer cash flow as the single biggest sales risk.
People just do not have the monthly budget.
They don't. So to force the monthly payment down to a number they can actually survive, buyers are stretching their auto loans out to incredible lengths.
Which brings up the most terrifying concept in the entire survey. The 84-month trade-in cliff.
It's grim. 64% of dealers say the vast majority of their customers are choosing loan terms of 72 months or longer.
We really need to explain the amortization math behind that.
Yeah, let's break it down. Because the loan is stretched out over 7 full years, those early payments are almost entirely consumed by interest.
Right.
The buyer is barely making a dent in the principal for the first 3 or 4 years. That slows equity buildup to an absolute crawl.
And the survey reports that 90% of dealers encounter negative equity frequently, or in almost every single deal.
90%.
Meaning 90% of the time, the person walking into the dealership owes more on their current car than the vehicle is actually worth.
Let's do an example. Let's say you want to trade in your car at year 4.
Okay.
You still owe $15,000 on the loan, but the dealer appraises the car at $10,000.
Ouch. That is a $5,000 shortfall.
Exactly. And this creates a brutal feedback loop. The buyer needs a new car, so the dealer takes that $5,000 negative equity and rolls it right into the new loan for the next vehicle.
So you're paying for a car you don't even own anymore. And to afford the monthly payment on that massively inflated new loan, you're forced to stretch the term even longer next time.
It's a complete financial treadmill.
Buyers are literally walking for 7 years just to get back to the starting line. You finish an 84-month loan, you are exhausted, the car is old, and you have zero equity to show for it.
And this massive delay in the trade-in cycle completely wrecks dealership inventory planning.
Right, because they rely on those used cars.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A healthy dealership relies on a predictable revenue model. People return every 3 or 4 years to trade in a decent used car, and they buy F&I products like extended warranties on the new one.
But when the customer is sidelined by negative equity for 7 years, that entire revenue engine just shatters.
It does. Now, the survey does pitch a potential fix. It suggests emphasizing payment architecture, specifically biweekly payments, to help people manage cash flow and accelerate that principal reduction.
Yeah, but we have to look critically at the source there. The piece was written by the CEO of a payment automation firm.
Ah.
Yeah, so potential commercial bias is definitely in play.
Right. What this doesn't answer is the independent validity of the proposed solution. There is a glaring lack of independent benchmarks proving that a biweekly payment software performs better than, say, simply targeting better manufacturer incentives.
Or pushing for right-sized down payments in the first place.
Exactly. The cash flow problem is very real, but we have to question if the proposed biweekly cure is just a well-disguised sales pitch.
That's a great catch. But regardless of the solution, the reality on the ground remains. OEMs are restricting production, and consumers are trapped in massive 7-year loans.
So if you operate a local dealership, you are caught right in the middle of this vice. You have to find efficiencies at the ground level, or you literally close your doors.
And dealerships are digging in. They're using two very different strategies to survive: cutting-edge software on the front end and old-school human mentorship on the back end.
Let's start with the front end. An analysis of digital retailing focuses heavily on the software side, specifically AutoTrader's AI tools.
Yeah, and it highlights how AI is no longer this experimental, futuristic concept.
Yeah.
It is a foundational, day-to-day survival tool for dealers.
The adoption metrics absolutely prove it. AutoTrader's AI-powered co-driver tools have hit 85% adoption.
85%.
Yep. It automates vehicle descriptions, it smartly reorders listing images, and it integrates directly via an API to prevent duplicate work across platforms.
For anyone unfamiliar, an API basically acts as a digital translator. It allows the dealer's internal inventory software to talk directly to AutoTrader's platform.
Right, completely preventing human workers from having to copy and paste the same data across 10 different websites.
And the sheer volume of administrative work that AI replaces is staggering. The analysis notes that in just over a year, this suite generated 2.5 million vehicle descriptions.
2.5 million. And they estimate it saved 200,000 hours of labor, which is nearly 20 years of manual work.
Hold on, 200,000 hours? I mean, that sounds like a massive marketing inflation to me. What this doesn't answer is exactly how AutoTrader calculated that specific time savings metric.
It is a very flashy number, and without seeing the raw data behind the calculation, we definitely have to take it with a grain of salt.
Right. Are we just taking their word for it?
Sure, but even if the math is slightly generous, the behavioral shift is undeniable. Dealerships are aggressively cutting routine, repeatable content tasks.
Because every single minute a car sits on the intake lot without a live, optimized online listing is a minute it is bleeding money.
Exactly. The AI speeds up that intake to listing pipeline dramatically.
Algorithms are great for marketing, but when you look at the back end,
The service bay.
that requires a completely human solution. You cannot use software to rebuild a transmission.
Not yet, anyway.
Right. And a report on aftermarket and fixed ops, which is the industry jargon for the service and parts departments, shows that the service bay is facing a severe talent crunch.
Service departments are just being crushed. Longer appointment lead times, widespread technician burnout, and a massive wave of veteran mechanics retiring out of the industry.
So the National Automobile Dealers Association, ANDE, is pushing a framework to solve this. They call it Apprenticeship in a Box.
And the core philosophy there is a total paradigm shift. They are urging dealerships to completely abandon a hiring-first strategy and adopt a development-first strategy.
Because endlessly trying to poach mechanics from the shop down the street is a zero-sum game, right?
Completely. It just artificially inflates local wages and results in incredibly inconsistent skill levels across the board.
The external talent pool is shrinking, so you have to build the talent internally.
Exactly. And the framework provides a very clear, stepwise skill progression with standardized training.
You know, the detail that really stuck out to me in the NADI report is how strictly they match specific tasks to technician readiness.
Yeah, that's crucial.
They let the apprentices contribute very early on basic routine tasks, which helps the overall shop throughput. But most importantly, they actively reserve the complex, high-level diagnostic work strictly for the qualified veteran techs.
Right.
It makes me think of running a commercial kitchen. You know, you don't have your Michelin star head chef chopping onions all day.
Right, you let the prep cooks handle the vegetables.
Exactly. You let the apprentices prep the vegetables so the veteran tech can focus entirely on the complex diagnostic cooking.
That structure protects the veterans from burning out on endless oil changes, and it gives the apprentices a really clear ladder to climb.
Stabilizing the service department builds a predictable internal talent pipeline. And if we tie this all together, that service-based stability is the most vital piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. Because of that F&I survey we discussed, the buyers trapped in 84-month loans with negative equity.
They aren't buying new cars.
Exactly. The service bay is exactly where dealers are going to have to make their money while those buyers wait out their massive loans.
But I keep coming back to the capital required to actually do this. The NDIA report outlines a great philosophy, but what this doesn't answer is the actual financial cost and the sheer time commitment required for a single rooftop dealership to customize and implement this framework locally.
It is an intense short-term investment, no doubt.
It takes massive resources to train apprentices when your shop is already backed up with angry customers.
But this is where the two dealership strategies collide. If AI is saving 20 years of marketing work on the front end, does that finally free up the capital to invest in these development-first apprenticeships on the back end?
Oh, that's the real question. Reallocating resources from automated tasks to human essential tasks. That's the exact strategic calculation general managers have to make right now.
It is.
So let's zoom out and synthesize the entire landscape, because we have covered a massive amount of ground across these sources. Looking at all the data, three defining themes emerge.
Let's hear them.
First, the pivot to brutal efficiency. We see it sourced from Nissan's deep cuts of 20,000 jobs. We see it in Ford battling commodity costs. And we see it in AutoTrader's AI labor-saving tech wiping out manual data entry.
And the second overarching theme is the affordability ceiling, sourced directly from the Detroit automakers relying on value trims, and that F&I survey explicitly highlighting the 84-month loan trap.
The consumer simply cannot absorb higher prices.
They can't.
And the third theme is building internal resilience. Sourced from NAD's push to train service techs from within, rather than endlessly trying to hire from a shrinking external pool.
You have to build your own life raft.
Exactly. Now, within those themes, there are two glaring tensions or contradictions that we really have to acknowledge.
Right. The first is the tension between reported profits and operational frailty.
Yes.
Nissan reports a 50 billion yen profit, but that directly contradicts their dropping physical sales volume. As we noted, the profit is a mirage propped up by temporary regulatory and currency tailwinds.
The second massive tension is between what the industry needs to sell and what the consumer can actually do. Automakers like Ford and GM desperately need to push high-volume, high-margin trucks.
But the consumer reality, shown in that F&I survey, is that 90% of buyers are drowning in negative equity. They physically cannot afford to trade up to those high-margin vehicles.
It is an unstoppable force meeting an immovable object, which leads us to the single practical takeaway of this entire environment.
The era of easy volume is completely over.
Over.
For the foreseeable future, success in the auto industry requires optimizing the cars you already have, actively managing the customer relationship through a massive 7-year ownership cycle, and utilizing every ounce of tech and training to make operations leaner.
Thank you so much for tuning into Auto News Talk. When the consumer is tapped out, the true winners aren't the ones who sell the most cars.
No, they're the ones who run the smartest operations, from the assembly line all the way to the local service bay.
Keep an eye on that average loan length. When that 84-month bubble finally starts to pop, it is going to reshape the dealership lot all over again. And here's something to mull over until next time.
What's that?
If an 84-month loan is the only way a consumer can afford a standard commuter car, what happens when those vehicles eventually need major out-of-warranty repairs in year 6, while the owner is still deeply underwater on the loan?